Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. Mega Man, or Rockman depending on where you're from, is the ever-beloved series of 2D side-scrolling games created by Capcom, featuring the iconic robot himself, Mega Man. Though he doesn't quite get as much time in the limelight nowadays, Mega Man used to be one of the biggest platforming series of its time and experienced a massive amount of success. Because of that success, over the years Mega Man turned into a huge franchise with a multitude of spin-offs to its name. And with these spin-offs came different gameplay styles and different versions of the iconic character. There was Mega Man X, Battle Network, Star Force, Zero, Legends. Everyone who has played Mega Man has a version that they prefer. And for me, that has always been the Mega Man X series. Today we'll be looking at the first entry, simply titled Mega Man X. Mega Man X acts as a sequel series to the original Mega Man games, and from a gameplay point of view, sought to reinvent the Mega Man formula as the series made its jump from the Nintendo Entertainment System to the new and more powerful Super Nintendo Entertainment System. When this game was first released, it was hailed as a masterpiece, and to some is regarded as one of the greatest video games of all time. But how about nowadays? Does Mega Man X still hold up? Let's turn the page and find out. Mega Man X is an action platformer for the Super Nintendo, released here in the West in 1994. The game takes place about 100 years after the original Mega Man. Dr. Light, the creator of the original Mega Man, creates X, a robot far more advanced than any robot he'd ever made before. X has the capability to think and feel emotions. Believing such a machine could be dangerous, Dr. Light sealed X away in a capsule. 100 years in the future, an archaeologist by the name of Dr. Kane discovers X's capsule and, fascinated with X's capabilities, mass-produces many robots just like X, called Reploids, which begin to live among humans. Over time, however, some Reploids would go on to rebel against the creators and go violent. As the cases of this happening increased, these rebellious Reploids were called Mavericks, and a special team of Reploids were formed for the purpose of putting a stop to them, called Maverick Hunters, which brings us to the beginning of Mega Man X. Sigma, the commander of the Reploids, one day goes Maverick himself and declares war on the humans, amassing an army of robots, as well as recruiting 8 other powerful Maverick Hunters and the dangerous X-Maverick Hunter Vile to his ranks. Wanting to put an end to the violence, X sets out with his friend Zero to put a stop to Sigma's plans. As soon as you press start, the game puts you right into the action with its opening stage. Mega Man X gameplay-wise is really straightforward. As X you can jump, fire small shots, and hold the shoot button to charge up an even stronger shot. Unlike the original Mega Man games, X has the ability to wall jump, letting you climb up walls to advance, adding a whole new method of navigating through levels. Your goal is to jump and shoot your way through each of the game's stages while avoiding enemy fire, and usually fighting a boss at the end of the stage. The opening stage of Mega Man X does an incredible job of naturally teaching the player the game's mechanics through gameplay, placing particular obstacles in the player's way that organically has them learn the controls. It's genius level design, really. X is great to control. His jumps have just the right amount of weight to it, and I always like having the decision of firing off faster or lower damaging shots, or waiting a few seconds for a more powerful charge shot. Once you get the leg upgrade, X will get his iconic dashing ability, which lets the player dash forward for a brief burst of speed and can jump longer distances if you jump right after dashing. X has the perfect movement in this game, and it feels just so good to play. Once you make it through the opening stage, you'll be forced into a boss fight with Vile, who is completely invincible. Defeated, it looks like X is going to be destroyed. However, Zero steps in and saves X, forcing Vile to retreat. X expresses frustration at his weakness, but Zero assures him that he needs time to grow before he reaches his full potential. With the opening stage done, the game really opens up, and we get a grid of 8 levels, each with its own Maverick to defeat. The player can choose any of the 8 levels to play, as there's no set order you have to play the stages in. Each stage is fun on its own to play, and has its own unique challenge to go along with it, such as moving platforms, lava floors, being chased by machines, etc. Each stage's gimmick offers a different challenge to make them feel unique. None of these gimmicks ever felt tedious or unfair, and I felt that each challenge they offered was really entertaining and gratifying to complete. Combine that with X's superb controls, and you have some really outstanding stages to play through. They don't overstay their welcome either. Each stage should take maybe a little over 5 minutes to complete, so even when I lost all my lives and had to restart, I never felt myself getting frustrated. It's the perfect mix of fun and challenge, without being overly brutal in design. The bosses are no slouches either. Though some are definitely more difficult than others, they have certain patterns to their moves that the player will need to memorize and use quick reflexes to dodge and attack when they get an opening. Much like with the stages, none of the bosses felt unfair to fight, and with enough patience and learning, the player can overcome any boss, and it feels great once you do. Now, no matter which of the 8 stages you pick as your first, you'll have a bit of a challenge to face. X does not start off particularly powerful, and it won't take many hits to take him out. However, after you manage to take out your first Maverick, you'll be given a special weapon which has unique properties from X's X-Buster. This can be a flamethrower, firing a tornado, an ice shot that ricochets into 3 shots after it hits a wall, things like that. Each weapon you unlock from each Maverick is incredibly fun to use, and they give you new ways to tackle the obstacles in each stage. It's impressive the selection of weapons X gets, with none of them feeling too samey. You can also switch between them on the fly with a simple press of the shoulder buttons, so it keeps the pace going as you cycle through your arsenal. However, perhaps the most important part of getting these special weapons is that one of the other Mavericks is weak to the weapon and will take extra damage after being hit with it. Which one is weak to the weapon you just got? Well, that's up to you to find out. Or, you could just look up the boss order online so that things go easier. Not saying I did that, but, it's something you can do if you want. Now that you have a special weapon, it will make the next boss fight you encounter much easier than whichever Maverick you took out first. However, if you want the original challenge of the boss fight, hey, just don't use that boss's weakness. The difficulty is completely up to you, the player. Speaking of difficulty being a choice, you also have the option to explore each stage to find hidden items scattered about. These items can include heart tanks, which increase your maximum HP, sub-tanks, which hold on to extra health so you can heal yourself in a pinch, and armor upgrades. These armor upgrades are found in capsules scattered around each stage, each with a special message to X from his creator, Dr. Light. There are 4 armor pieces needed in order to complete X's ultimate armor. These upgrades let you headbutt through platforms, dash, get a more powerful charge shot, and reduce your damage by half. It also gives X a slick white and blue look, which I think look way cooler than his standard blue, but I digress. As you slowly collect these upgrades and special weapons, each stage will start to get easier. You'll be able to take more hits, dish out more damage, and deal with bosses easier by having the necessary weapons. And that's one of the best feelings Mega Man X is able to convey during gameplay, and that's the feeling of getting stronger. Just like Zero said at the start of the game, we're slowly growing and beginning to reach our full potential, and the player doesn't just get to see that, but they get to feel it as they progress. Of course, just like with the special weapons, if you don't like the idea of stages getting easier to go through, getting these upgrades, save for the leg parts for the dash, are completely optional, and you can ignore them, or only pick up a handful to get the challenge that feels just right for the player. However, once you defeat all 8 Mavericks, you'll finally be able to take the fight to Sigma, with 3 stages of Sigma's fortress leading up to the showdown with the big man himself. And even with all the upgrades, this stage will still test everything you've learned up to this point, and I found myself getting a handful of game overs even with all the upgrades. These stages have some platforming challenges, a boss rush in the form of refighting all 8 Mavericks, and some new bosses, as well as Vile, who we fought in the beginning of the game. We can see that Vile has defeated Zero, and we once again challenge Vile to a fight. X is once again defeated. However, Zero sacrifices himself to destroy Vile's ride armor, allowing us to fight Vile himself and bring an end to the X Maverick Hunter. Getting to defeat the boss that was completely invincible at the start of the game is a damn good feeling too. After all that, we reach Sigma himself, where you need to fight through his dog, Sigma himself, and then Sigma in this wolf robot? It's very weird, but anyways, once you do that, Sigma is destroyed and the day is saved, as X watches Sigma's fortress crumble into dust while reflecting on how long he will need to fight and why he chooses to do so, thus bringing Mega Man X to a close. For as straightforward as the story in this game is, I really like it, X and Zero are really cool characters, the bosses all have great designs, and putting a stop to a mass robot uprising and saving humanity is a cool feeling. Story aside, I'm going to say this flat out. Mega Man X is an incredible game, arguably one of the greatest 2D platformers of all time. X controls like a dream, especially once you get the dash. You can move through the stage with such finesse, and the dash jump can let you dodge all kinds of obstacles if you use it right. You can't get too careless with it. Foregoing any attempt of being careful can lead to you getting hit with a bunch of pot shots, but it makes the simple act of moving left and right feel fun, and that's an impressive feat. The sprite work on each stage is also commendable. The upgrade from the regular Mega Man games on NES to X on the SNES really did wonders for the world design. Each stage has a unique look to it. Not one stage in this game feels identical to the one before it. You have a frozen tundra, a factory with lava dripping from pipes, jumping aboard skyships. The individual levels in Mega Man X are all stellar. Oh, and the music. The soundtrack from Mega Man X is fantastic. Right from the opening stage, Mega Man X's OST gives fast-paced rock-style music that I absolutely love, and none of the stages disappoint. My favorites being Flame Mammoth, Vile's boss theme, Storm Eagle, Spark Mandrill, and Sigma Fortress 1. But honestly, I don't think there's a single track in this entire game that I wouldn't at least qualify as good. It's all great stuff. Perhaps the most impressive part about Mega Man X is just how replayable it is. Being an SNES game, the game itself isn't particularly long. You can beat it in about 3 to 4 hours, maybe more if you don't know the boss order to go in. But this game is so easy to pick up and play that you can easily sink way more hours into it by doing repeat playthroughs. I love coming back and replaying this game just because it's so much fun, but the way X is structured allows multiple playthroughs to be different experiences. Maybe you decide to do a run where you try to get as little upgrades as you can, or maybe you do a run where you don't fight any of the bosses with the weaknesses. Even just changing the order you do the stages in can change up the experience. For me, I had a really easy time with Storm Eagle's stage, because he was the last Maverick I fought, and by that point I was a walking god with all my upgrades. However, if Storm Eagle is, say, the first or second Maverick I decide to fight, the stage will be a different experience because of the difficulty, while other stages will be easier down the line. I'm rambling a bit, but the point is Mega Man X has brilliant design that makes it so easy to pick up and play, while still offering something a bit new. Speaking of offering something new, one of the coolest things Mega Man X does is that some of its stages will change depending on what stages you have beaten before it. For example, in Flame Mammoth's stage, you'll reach these conveyor belts over top of flowing lava, and touching the lava will deal a massive amount of damage to X. However, if you beat Chill Penguin's stage, Flame Mammoth stage will be completely frozen over, and that lava obstacle that was once there is now solid ice you can walk across. Spark Mandrill's power plant stage had these platforms that charged and fire electrical shots across the floor. However, beating Storm Eagle's stage will cause his ship to crash into the power plant, taking out the power. The stage will now be darker and much harder to see, but those electrical shots will no longer happen. What a brilliant idea! Not only does this change how you can approach each stage, but it stops stages from feeling like they take place in an isolated void, but rather one big interconnected world. I think if I had any complaints about Mega Man X, it would be an issue that occurred in a lot of games at the time. And that's where if you destroy an enemy and then move away so that where the enemy was goes off screen, that enemy will immediately respawn back into the level. But with how much Mega Man X does right, this one complaint affects very little in the grand scheme of things, and I can easily deal with it because I'm just having such a fun time. I think the point has been made sufficiently clear that I simply adore Mega Man X. The levels, the characters, the movement, the replayability, all these things are remarkable in their own right, and they come together to create as close to a perfect platformer I have ever seen. So with all my praise, everyone probably knows that this game is going to go pretty high in the ranking, but just how high? To be honest, I was absolutely torn between if this game would take the number 1 or number 2 spot when stacked up against Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, and I was so torn, it actually took me 2 days of deliberation to come to a decision. However, after all that, I have reached the conclusion that Mega Man X will take the number 1 spot in my ranking. To be honest, depending on what mood I'm in, X and Explorers of Sky could easily swap rankings, but this time, Mega Man X seizes the crown as the number 1 game in our ranking. Alright, so what are we going to be looking at next? Well, it's been a little while, so why don't we take a look at the wild world of anime games once more. This time, we're going to be looking at a Naruto game. To be honest, and kind of embarrassingly, I own quite a few Naruto games, so it was only a matter of time before we got one on the randomizer. Which one is it? Well, you'll just have to wait and see. In the meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and may we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.